Welcome to 5 Good Minutes.
You're listening to today's inspirational message on the book of Ecclesiastes
With Brady Randall.
Yesterday in Ecclesiastes 3, we focused on verse 11 that said that God has put eternity on our hearts. And it reminds us that there's got to be more than this life. And today we'll look at verses 12 to 15, which I believe show us why God has done that in the first place. Here's what we read. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all of their toil, for this is the gift of God. I know that everything that God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken from it. God does it so that people will fear him. So here the teacher, the preacher, continues to show us that having a true perspective helps us to gain wisdom and see things with clarity. And in the author's own wisdom, he has found that there's nothing better than being truly happy, doing good, eating and drinking, and finding satisfaction in toil. In fact, if this has been true in your own life, the preacher says, this is the gift of God. This perspective, these seasons, God's provision is a gift from him to you. But why does God do that? Why does God allow us to find some satisfaction? And I think verse 14 answers that question. I know that everything that God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken from it. And God does this so that people will fear him. Now, I have to admit, it's confounding to try and understand totally the mind of God. His ways and thoughts are so much higher than ours. And how many times have you ever wondered aloud, why did God allow such and such? Why did he do what he did? And even if he told you the exact reason, would it make it any better anyway? If he told you why he allowed your loved one to die, if he gave you the specific reason, would it make it any better? It wouldn't bring them back to life. And at the same time, everything that God does endures forever. This life, this stuff, our bodies do not endure forever. And so why do we have to keep buying new stuff? Think about it. New toys for kids, new clothing. Because the ones that we've outgrown. They've worn out. Cars that no longer work. Why do we have to keep upkeeping the places where we live? Why does every body eventually break down and die? Because the things on this earth wear out. They're finite, unlike God, for whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nothing taking away from it, and because he is God, and ultimately we are not. And God works in this way so that you and I will fear him. Now that's an interesting phrase. The fear of God or the fear of the Lord is certainly, again, I think an interesting way to put that. Why would a loving God want you and I to be afraid of him, if that's what this suggests? Why would the phrase, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, be all throughout the Proverbs? And why does God bringing satisfaction ultimately lead to a fear of the Lord? Now, fear in the Old Testament can denote a respect that a servant has for his master or an awe of something or someone. But it can also mean to be terrified. And surely a good God doesn't want his kids to be terrified of him, does he? And yet before we move past that, I'm always struck by this verse by Jesus in Matthew 10:28, where he's talking to his disciples and he said, do not be afraid of those who can kill the body but cannot kill the soul, but rather do be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Now, this kind of fear ultimately fears being outside the presence of God. This fear recognizes that God is a consuming fire, the most powerful being in the universe, unlike every other being in the universe. And you and I do not want to be on the other side of this God, and yet he still brings satisfaction. This God desires that we would be happy and do good. God desires, as verse 14 says, that everything that he does endures forever. And this realization should lead us not only to fear God, but to seek him. And today I believe that God wants to remind you or to encourage you that He is good. He has good plans for you. He has desires to satisfy you. But even though He is good, He is not safe. There is no one like God, and yet it's better to be with God in your current season of life than anywhere else without Him. God's good gifts to you and me are not ends in and of themselves, but He's given them that you and I might seek satisfaction not in the gift, but in the giver Himself.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.